Hey guys, it's Stove, and obviously this is a little bit late. This video will probably end up coming out either later tonight when I'm recording this, around about 8 o'clock now, or this will end up just being uploaded to YouTube around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. But right now I am obviously, like I said, a little late on these videos. I tried to record this the last time and unfortunately it did not work to my effort, because it was a little under 30 minutes to just kind of go through some of these games. Well, for the most part, most of the games. But however, I saw that there was some audio issues, so I ended up deleting that whole thing. So we're gonna try this again, see how it goes. So first things up, we're going obviously look at, this is Friday, and obviously you have like some smaller matchups from the week 8 college football this past weekend. A lot of the Conference USA and Sun Belt, so quite a few matchups there. Louisville playing number 2 Miami, which Miami probably dropped quite a bit actually, and you know, rightfully so. They lose against Louisville, who Louisville I think is 22nd or 23rd now, so it was very good that they were able to actually beat Miami at Miami University, even when Carson Beck was able to play pretty solid. But again, you know, stuff like that happens in college. But speaking of ranked teams losing, you also had Nebraska, number 25, who's no longer ranked, unfortunately, but Minnesota was able to play almost lights out at home, 24-6. Solid game for the rushing of things, because both Minnesota and Nebraska had some solid rushing yards, but Minnesota's team was able to crack down on 148 rushing yards. Mr. Taylor there, I think he even got 1 or 2 of the touchdowns as well. Walker, who actually played pretty well, 340 passing yards. There was also the San Jose and Utah having a very good back and forth game. Not necessarily surprised there, because even though they're a small program compared to a lot of other football programs, they do still play pretty darn good whenever it's them against other small programs. North Carolina losing against California. Good thing is about it though is it was close in California University. My only issue is that they still lost, so not necessarily getting any better, just still taking L's. Ohio State absolutely obliterating Wisconsin. I generally thought, if you guys want to go back to the preview of week 8 college football, I did say I thought that Ohio State was actually going to get like 30 to 34 points, where Wisconsin was going to put up at least 10 to 14 points, but that didn't happen. Ohio State, this would be the 3rd time, I believe, that Ohio State didn't allow a single point, and that's twice now against in-conference teams, mind you. So pretty good for Ohio State. Indiana even played a solid game against Michigan State. Texas A&M had a very back and forth game against Arkansas. You know, there was like half the quarters were like passing, and then the other half was straight up rushing, it felt like. Granted, you still had some big plays here and there on both passing and rushing, but it still felt like they were just taking turns at scoring the ball. Same with Georgia and Ole Miss, but Georgia did end up beating Ole Miss at Georgia, so pretty solid there, 43-35. Ole Miss, another ranked opponent, and even Tennessee losing against Alabama. And this is going to continue to keep on going on because I'm pretty sure I think it was like a third of the ranked teams that played ended up losing, if I'm not mistaken. Or I'm pretty sure it was either a quarter or a third. I mean, still a difference, but it was a larger margin of the ranked teams had lost than expected. But Alabama had a very solid game. That second half, they really didn't allow Tennessee to score at all. Texas Tech ended up losing against Arizona State at Arizona State. So honestly, I felt like Texas Tech was the better team on paper, but considering that I think Texas Tech's quarterback isn't necessarily doing too hot, injury wise, I think he was injured either before going into the game or he did get injured during the game. Arizona State was able to capitalize, and hell, they even scored first, if I'm not mistaken. Oregon played well against Rutgers. That's no surprise. Vandy and LSU had a very good matchup back and forth. SEC seemed to be on fire here with all these banger matchups, but Vandy was able to win at home against LSU. Vandy, I think, is now either top 12 or top 10, so that's very good for them. Georgia Tech beating Duke. Duke actually playing a lot better than expected, but you know what? I give them props where it's due. Notre Dame, same thing. I honestly thought that they were going to lose against USC. They were on the I felt like they were on their way to being that one out of a handful of teams to basically say, well, if you beat Notre Dame or you beat these teams in the top 25, then you should be in the top 25, but at the same time, you haven't beat too many teams in the top 25. You haven't really shown that you are a good team, which Notre Dame was able, like I said, to pull out a win. 10-point differential against USC. So USC, I think, is still a solid football program, and I think they have the chance to actually win all of, if not most of the rest of their games. But we will just have to see. Oklahoma beating South Carolina. As close as it was defensively, South Carolina still held them to 26. It's just their offensive plays weren't able to pick up. They had some solid gains here and there, but not enough to actually score more than 7 points on Oklahoma's solid defense this year. Utah and BYU had a very good Big 12 matchup. BYU ended up beating Utah. Again, solid matchup. I thought that BYU, I'm pretty sure, you guys can correct me if I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure I did say that BYU was going to end up beating Utah. It's just if Utah's defense would have done certain things differently, or if you would have had Utah's defense on paper come in and play BYU, then it may have been a little bit different. But it obviously wasn't. It was as close as I thought it would be, to be honest, especially with both teams having solid defense and good enough offense to be able to win games, but not like the greatest offense, especially BYU being in the top 15. You can make an argument that BYU, I don't even think, has a top 12, maybe even a top 15 offense in the nation. You can make an argument there for sure. Missouri and Auburn having double overtime, 23-17 was a solid game there. Missouri able to go 2-1 in conference, and I believe 6-1 overall record. And then Auburn still, they're now 3-4 overall record, and they also ended up going 0-4 in conference play. That is quite embarrassing if you're just looking at the record. However, with Auburn still being like 6-7 points, that was a 6-point differential there between them. And I did say that Auburn has only lost to their in-conference teams, or just lost in general, whenever they are losing only by 10 or less points. Same with Missouri. I thought it was going to be that close of a game regardless of how high or how many points both teams scored. So it was still a great game. The two overtimes looked pretty insane to me. Virginia facing Washington State. Virginia, very close game at home, but able to pick up that win by 2 points. South Florida playing like how they should be playing, and in my opinion, are still playing like they are wanting to say, we are right now, at this moment in college football, we are in the top 3 of best Florida teams in the top 3 best Florida teams. Arguably, you can say South Florida, because right now, in my opinion, South Florida is doing exactly what Boise State was doing last year. It's just, in my opinion, you're having less runs by a running back. You are having more runs by a quarterback, because I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, your quarterback leads your team in both passing and rushing yards. And I'm pretty sure even rushing touchdowns, but I could be wrong there. It's just insane. Now, granted, it's kind of a weird matchup, especially if it was a bowl game. But imagine Vanderbilt's team versus South Florida's team. Realistically, you would think Vandy will be able to beat South Florida. But you know how many Florida teams that they were close in beating. Granted, they were close only against Florida University, but I think if their defense would have showed up a little bit more like they did against Florida University, going up against Miami, it would have been a little bit different, but the only thing would be that South Florida would have scored more than 2 touchdowns, I'm pretty sure. Or 1 touchdown and a couple of field goals. But still, matching up South Florida versus Vanderbilt in a bowl game would do some numbers for sure, in my opinion, especially since they're gaining popularity, the both of them. Texas versus Kentucky. Surprisingly, Archie Manning, even though he technically was not leading the passing yards in that game, Kentucky's quarterback was. Kentucky still played pretty well defensively. I think they played way better than what Texas had to deal with last week, and yet we all thought that Texas was like, oh wow, like you guys actually beat a team that had a solid defense, and now we're like, okay, like you guys should be able to do well as long as Archie Manning, doesn't get injured, or as long as you guys don't have to deal with Archie Manning getting back into like a sucker's world of throwing picks for no reason at all, or overthrowing or underthrowing your wide receivers. But Kentucky still made it a very close game, made it towards overtime, and Texas was able to just be like, nah, we're gonna settle this down, and we're gonna get this field goal here. Memphis and UAB, you know what? I'm not surprised, because even though Memphis had been playing pretty well, UAB is the type of team to just suddenly win against a team, even though they hadn't been doing very well as of the rest of the season. Of course, UAB does beat Memphis, and Memphis is like, yeah, we're still Memphis, by the way. We're not like South Florida. We're not like what's their names? I'm trying to think. We're not BYU. We're not goodness. I don't want to say Texas State, because I don't think they're undefeated, but there is an undefeated team that is still not ranked yet. I just can't remember the dang university. But anyway, like, it just makes sense that Memphis does lose that game, but pretty solid game by both of them, realistically. Could have even went into overtime. Cincinnati, Oklahoma State. Cincinnati absolutely blowing Oklahoma State out of the water. Cincinnati playing phenomenal passing and rushing yards, both led by Cincinnati players. Even the receiving side, obviously. Washington at Michigan, and obviously I was only right about the thing of Michigan playing in Michigan would have done differently than what I would have thought if Michigan was at Washington. And obviously Michigan's defense came to play. Bryce Underwood even had 230 passing yards, and I believe 2 passing touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. Washington was able to score once, but after that, Michigan was like, no mas, can't have that happen again. And Michigan did exactly what they needed to do. They made sure that the Washington's offense did not get going early, and that's exactly what they needed to do. And that's exactly what Ohio State did. They made sure that Washington never got going early, or never got going at all, because you let Washington go, your offense may do good here and there, but it may end up being Washington could still outscore you, depending on, you know, their confidence or their morale during the game. So Michigan had a solid win there. UConn beating Boston College at Boston College is a little bit of a shock to me, but other than that, solid win for UConn. Arizona versus Houston. Unfortunately, even though Arizona was fighting super hard, Arizona did lose against Houston at Houston University, only by 3 points. Okay, can't be mad, but, you know, wish they would have gotten the win. But Houston did pull that one out pretty good. TCU and Baylor had a very good back and forth for the Big 12 standout game of the week. I'd probably give it to Baylor and TCU, because, you know, that's two teams that aren't like the best in their conference, but still are showing like, hey, we can fight too. And then you got some of these smaller teams. Army actually got beat by Tulane. You remember how it was either pretty sure it was Navy. Yeah, Navy ended up winning so many games last year. Now I'm overthinking it, because I feel like it was either Army or Navy that won so many games last year, but then like their last game, their second to last and their last game, they ended up losing. So it was like so random. UCF winning against West Virginia. Solid win there for them. They're starting to try to accumulate wins after having just a poor start, in my opinion. Especially from where they were either during like 2020, 2022, and 2023. Well, 2021, 2022, and then like even before COVID, they actually had a solid program. I thought they were going to do a lot better. Northwestern beating Purdue. SMU coming out, winning, and technically upsetting Clemson, but the way Clemson is playing, it seems like, you know, it's not necessarily an upset anymore, because Clemson, just like how Florida State was last year, Clemson ended up is like just, they're fumbling a lot of games that they should be winning. But then again, for the most part, they are fumbling games, especially in conference. Because sure, they could have lost like some of these games at like the beginning of the season, because they don't always face them. But once you get into the in-conference play, then you're thinking, okay, well, Clemson should be able to know how to beat these guys. There shouldn't be any wonder about that. But these in-conference teams were like, no, we're not as easy as you think we are to beat. So teams like SMU are beating them. And honestly, I still think that's ridiculous to see that Clemson is losing. No offense to SMU or to some of these other teams that Clemson's already lost to. It just feels like Clemson is so talented. Regardless of how many people they lost, they got quite a few people in the transfer portal. They even got in the top 25 of recruiting class. I'm pretty sure even a higher, I think it might have even been top 15 in recruiting class. And yet they're still losing. I don't know if it's the injuries. I don't know if they're saddling up more younger players like freshmen and sophomores taking over the reins than you have seniors and juniors, but it is still kind of ridiculous seeing that. But also you have Air Force winning against Wyoming in a close matchup. Air Force, solid win there. Boise State absolutely obliterating, not necessarily obliterating, but definitely putting a lot of points on UNLV. I just think that Boise State's defense still has a lot of work to do. I think, if anything, Boise State's offense is still there. It's just the defense continues to keep on letting on points like they are a bad team. I don't think they are. I just think they have either a bad defense or they need to change some coaching over there to gain some different scheme or use a different playbook to be able to not let teams like UNLV score 31 points on you, on your defense. I'm just saying. And then you got, again, some small matchups here. James Madison winning big against Old Dominion. Texas State losing in overtime, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't Texas State. But Marshall ends up winning in double overtime. You don't necessarily hear them winning a lot, in my opinion. Temple ended up completely destroying Charlotte at Charlotte University. Ball State doing well against Akron. Ohio University doing well against Northern Illinois. Again, some more solid, small but solid in-conference play against each other, and it's all good for them. North Texas doing their thing as the top of the leaderboard in that in their small conference there. Mississippi State versus Florida, that was actually a very good matchup, and did not disappoint. 23-21, very close indeed. Iowa and Penn State was another team that I was originally going to put on my top 17, but I did say, hey, my top, not if I said top 17, I meant top 7. But what I said in the last video, if you guys, again, go check that out, but Iowa, I did say Iowa was coming off of an absolutely great game, a perfect game on defense, not allowing a single point whenever they faced the God, I can't remember who they faced, but it was still against it was still a beautiful showing for both their offense and defense. And at the same time, they are now facing a Penn State team, even without a actual head coach, they are still a very talented squad, no doubt about it. And Iowa is showing, hey, we're a talented squad too. And like I thought that they would, they were going to do all that they could, regardless of where they were, whether they were losing before, whether they were 22-24 before that clock in the fourth quarter hit. They were going to be like, no, we're driving down the field, we're getting a field goal, and we are winning this game, because that is exactly what we need morale-wise and confidence-wise to go through the rest of these games and hopefully be able to have a stronger showing in the second half of the season than we did in the first half of the season. UCLA winning against Maryland, Hawaii winning big at Colorado State, Pittsburgh actually beating Syracuse. Very nice, very nice. And yeah, obviously Florida State did end up losing against Stanford, and granted, I'm pretty sure it was not necessarily controversy, it's just a not very late, but a damaging hit towards the Florida State quarterback. Stanford was penalized, but still Stanford was able to make sure that Florida State still did not enter that end zone, even with all the stuff that happened the last 4 to 6 minutes, I believe, of the fourth quarter. Stanford's defense played well for the most part, but at the same time, if that quarterback was not taken out of the game for the rest of that fourth quarter, are we seeing a different outcome? Is Florida State scoring a touchdown? Are they going for 2 points, or are they not? Just go into overtime, see what happens. And if they go into overtime, are they winning against Stanford? You know, stuff like that is definitely in question, especially for what Stanford did. I do believe that corner/safety who made that play, who I believe is a senior, by the way, he's a 5th-year senior, he ends up getting thrown out of the game, I'm pretty sure. Still, though, like I said, does not change. It does change the game a lot, and it does change the momentum of how that offense is trying to play to get down and score a touchdown, tie up that game, or even win that game by a 2-point conversion. So stuff like that does hurt a team a lot, and that even goes to show in the NFL that you hit, even though in the NFL it's a lot different, you hurt a star player. Like, let's bring up the Bengals. If you hurt Joe Burrow is going to be out, and if we have to deal with the rest of the time with one quarterback, that's going to be, like, the game plan is still the same, but the quarterback is obviously different. The guy who is throwing the ball, calling the, going off the calls, making the decisions, that is a completely different person. And whether or not you want your quarterbacks to think the exact same thing and play nearly exactly the same way, you may be able to do something, but at the same time, it's not going to happen. It just can't. And I think a lot of people still don't understand that you make a play like that, you hurt a player that controls the game as such as that Florida State QB did or has before, then it ends up in Stanford's hands more. Even if that safety / corner gets kicked out of the game, that doesn't necessarily affect them too much, especially since majority of their defense has, even the ones on the bench, have played so many reps the last 6-7 games, just because Stanford has been like that not good to where they're like, let's just, start anybody, or let's just throw anybody out there on the field, give them some reps as much as humanly possible. But again, still ends up being that way. Oregon State even winning against Lafayette, but not too meaningful, at least for other people that look at college football. But anyway, that is pretty much it. Seemed like this video did pretty well, I'm pretty sure. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know. Please like, please subscribe if you haven't already. Please comment. Let me know what stuff that I didn't get to, or what details I didn't share more of. And as always, I hope you enjoy the video. I hope you enjoyed the last few videos, well, all the videos that I have up on there. And yeah, you guys have a good day. Peace.